what you do. I'm serious. I mean, I sat back there and I'm so humble. Thank you. My wife said, is Stephen still in charge of the outreach? I said, I think he is. But I can't wait to get back and tell her that you are. Thank you so much for what you do. I'm Pastor David Luna. I'm from West Texas. I just want to share just a couple of my testimony. I grew up in a house where my father was in and out of prison. Father only went to the 4th grade. Didn't have no schooling. His dad died. He had to take care of the family. My mom also never went to school, worked in the fields. She just worked hard for us. And so my dad, probably at the age of 30, he started using heroin. And my dad used to sell our furniture, sell our food, sell all kinds of stuff for years. I say for 3 years, we didn't have no bills. I remember waking up in the morning about 6 o'clock in the morning and him taking us, telling us to go and get water from the neighbor, from the faucet, so that we could heat it up in an electric so we go to school. And I'm sharing that not to bash my father or my mother. I'm just sharing these are the life that I lived when growing up. In 2013, my mom went home to be with the Lord. I got to lead her to the Lord 2 weeks before she passed away. So praise God, I got to lead her to the Lord. In 1999, my wife, she had scheduled a prayer meeting at our house. And she asked me, she goes, listen, do you want to come to the prayer meeting or do you want to go right around? I said, you know what, I'll stick around. And that afternoon, I gave my life to the Lord. But here was the thing. I gave my life to the Lord at the age of 25. But I remember being in school, in high school, nobody ever shared Jesus with me. I didn't even know who he was. I remember at being 25 and opening up my Bible for the first time and reading the Lord's Prayer and saying, wow, this is the same prayer that the football team used to rehearse in the locker room. Because they rehearse it every time they go out to play football. And I thought to myself, but nobody ever shared Jesus with me. About a month ago, I shared this story with a lady that grew up. I grew up in a town that was 1,400 people. And there was 12 churches. And not one person shared Jesus with me. There was a lady that I was sharing this with her, and she began to cry. She said, Pastor, she said, David, I am so sorry. I said, no, it's okay. I said, I'm just sharing with you because there's people out there that are me, that's never heard about Jesus. We assume that everybody has heard about Jesus. We assume that everybody has been hugged. Growing up, I was never told they were proud of me. I was never told they loved me. I never received a hug. So I grew up with those things. And so now when somebody introduced me to Jesus, it changed my life. And I'll never forget this. I remember getting saved in my house and attending a church, this small church that I was attending. I opened up a closet that they had a storage room. And inside that storage room, I found the book, Faith to Faith, from Brother Kenneth Copeland. It's amazing to me because here's the thing, that was the first book I ever read. I don't know how I even got through high school because I never read a book. But that was the first book I ever read, and I still read that book today. It's changed my life. And I received that book, and I started reading it. And I'll never forget that after reading it, just reading it, it came to start changing the way I was thinking, and it started changing my life. And I'll never forget in 2010, my pastor, there was 3 pastors in our staff at that time, and he wanted one of us to become a youth pastor. And I shared with him that, I shared with my pastor, I said, I don't know if I want to do this. And at that moment, a couple of months later, one of the pastors left to become a youth pastor in Oklahoma. The other one went and started his own church. I was the only one left. So I said, I'll take it. And you got to hear this. This is so powerful. I'll never forget that the Lord spoke to me after I brought down, we did our first conference. I've learned to do our conference by the way Brother Copeland does his conference here. We do a conference where we bring hundreds of teenagers and we don't charge them one penny. And what's this? And the youth raise the money. We don't do one fundraiser. We don't do nothing. God brings in the money supernaturally. So what he does for the adults, we're doing for teenagers, calling it a faith conference. But that book changed my life. I'll never forget doing our first conference and then praying for me. At the age of 33, I was 33 years old when I first did our first conference, and I remember the pastor praying for me and me landing on the floor, being slain in the spirit. The Lord took me back to when I was 15. Okay? When I was 15, our house burned to the ground. I mean, we lost everything. So me and my little brother moved in with a family that are foster parents. What I didn't know was that family were farmers. Okay? So they took me, and my foster dad sent me to go work with the hired hand. He had sheep. Now watch this. I'm 33 years old. I forgot about this. When I'm on the floor, the Lord takes me back to when I was 15. I'm working with that hired hand, and that hired hand takes me, and we're driving, and we go to this dry lake. At the bottom of this dry lake, there was a sheep there that had a big old hole right here where the buzzards had been eating him, but he was still alive. Here's what that hired hand did. That hired hand took that sheep, put him on the table. I'm 15. He gives me a hammer, and he tells me, kill it. Get it out of its misery. I lifted up the hammer, and I just began to weep and weep. I forgot about this when I'm on the floor. The Lord's reminded me of this 18 years later. I go and I sit in the passenger side, and until today I can hear it when he's hitting that sheep on the head, killing it. When I'm sitting there on the floor, the Lord told me this. He said, I didn't call you. The reason you couldn't kill it was because I didn't call you to be a hired hand. I called you to be a shepherd. And he said, even when no one else sees it that it can live, you do. Now I want you to hear this. This is so powerful. Our youth ministry for years has been called Giant Slayers. And so the Lord asked me, he said, what's the name of this youth ministry? I said, Giant Slayers. He said, what's your name? I said, David. That's how he called me. That's how he's changed my life. And I want to share this with you. It says this in Ephesians chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 7 through 10 in the Message. This is my life right here. It says, this is my life work, helping people understand and respond to this message. It came as a sheer gift to me. A real surprise. God handling all the details. When it came to presenting this message to people who had no background in God's way, I was the least qualified of any of the available Christians. God saw to it that I was equipped. But you can be sure that it had nothing to do with my natural abilities. Verse 8 says, and so here I am, preaching and writing about things that are way over my head. The inexhaustible riches and generosity of Christ. My task is to bring out in the open and make plain what God, who created all this in the first place, has been doing in the secret and behind the scenes all along. God had been working behind the scenes all along, even when I was 15 years old. Even when nobody had shared Jesus with me. Even when I had never heard about God. God was already setting me up because he was working behind the scenes. And I was listening to Brother Copeland, and he said, don't worry about their face. And I titled this, because he asked me if I would share this, and I titled this teaching that I just gave you. I titled it is Thank You for Finding Me. Because when you go out today, remember this face. Because there's someone out there that has never heard about Jesus. And I want to share with you, remember this face. And on their behalf, I want to say thank you for finding me. Thank you for finding me. Because there's another David out there. There's another David. And I just want to thank God for Brother Copeland. I'm telling you, he has changed my life. I've met him twice. And if I have this time, I just want to share this. I went to the ministers' conference last year, and I sat there, and he talked about when he used to go speak with Brother Hagin. When I graduated in special ed. I didn't have an education. I've never gone to school. I've never gone to Bible school. I've never done any of this ever. I didn't know how to read. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to spell. I didn't know how to do all of that. But I sat there and heard him said that he remembers going and preaching with Brother Hagin. They used to be called Copenhagen. And he said, I remember, he said, if you would have gone to my bookstores or my book table and then gone to his, you would have saw the same thing. And Brother Hagin told him, Kenneth, you can at least change the title. And he said, why? I heard him say that, and I sat there at the ministers' conference, and the Lord spoke to me. And he said, David, the reason that it worked was because there was a generation who didn't know Brother Kenneth Copeland, but knew Brother Kenneth Hagin. He said, but there was a generation arising that knew Brother Copeland, but didn't know Brother Hagin. He said, guess what? There's a generation that knows Brother Copeland that doesn't know David Luna. But there's a generation that is rising that knows David Luna that doesn't know Brother Copeland. And guess what? I have written 5 books since then. Because I sat there. I came from nothing. But my wife decided to have a prayer meeting. And I decided, and what's this? And God led me to that Faith to Faith book. And it's changed my life. God is working behind the scenes. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of those that you will reach today. Thank you for finding them. Because their life will change forever. Thank you.
Now, I want to challenge you, and that's this. What is God calling you to do? Because he never knew he was going to be a youth pastor, but yet, out of nothing, started to work, just had a vision on the inside of you. And when you first started that, how did you get started, and how did you grow your youth group to the level it is today?
I just started implementing everything I learned from Brother Copeland. When I would watch him do things, I would do it, and I would see it. You know, for me, it was more just stepping out and doing it without fear. I just remembered where I came from, and I wanted to go and be a blessing to others.
And so your youth group went from how many people to what it is now? And then even the conference, tell us about that.
Our youth ministry, when I first started, we had, I think, 4 girls and 6 boys. And we grew it. Our conference started with 4 boys, 6 girls. We grew to over 500. When I first started our youth ministry, we had like 15, and we went to about 265. Simply because I just wanted to reach out. Our youth ministry is mainly of misfits. We literally taking them from the streets. I mean, they are from the streets. They come from people that we probably attract more teenagers who don't have fathers. They're fatherless. And I remember crying for the first time, telling God, how? I didn't have a dad. He said, David, I came to be a father to the fatherless. this. He said, I want you to be a father to them. And that's all I've done. Be a father. I've loved them. I tell them I love them because I was never told I was loved. I tell them I'm proud of you because I was never told I was proud. They were proud of me. I tell them, I hug them because I never ever was hugged when I was young. So I have literally implemented what the enemy tried to use for evil and to destroy my life. I've turned it around now and use it against him to try to reach more teenagers.